Look, I'm gonna tell you something that'll make you think twice about those perfect families you see on Instagram. You know, the ones matching Christmas sweaters, spotless houses, kids with those 2 white smiles. Yeah, the Hendersons were exactly that family. And let me tell you, their story is gonna blow your mind. So here's the thing. 3 months ago, I got a call from my buddy Marcus. Now, Marcus isn't the type to get shaken easily, but his voice was all over the place. "Dude," he says, "you're not gonna believe what I just found." And honestly, he was right. I didn't believe it. Not at first. Anyway, let me back up a second and paint you a picture of the Hendersons. Richard Henderson. That's Marcus's old man, was this hotshot corporate lawyer, the kind of guy who wore suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. His wife, Catherine, was on every charity board in town. Their daughter, Emma, straight-A student, volleyball captain, the whole 9 yards. And Marcus, well, he was the golden boy. Graduated top of his class, landed some fancy job in finance, right out of college. They lived in this massive colonial house in Westchester. You know, the kind with the perfectly manicured lawn that looks like it's been trimmed with nail scissors. White picket fence, literally. The neighbors used to joke that if Norman Rockwell painted suburbia, he'd paint the Hendersons. But here's what nobody tells you about perfect families: they're usually hiding something. And the Hendersons, man, they were hiding something big. It started on a random Tuesday afternoon. Marcus had driven up from the city to help his mom clear out the attic. His dad had passed away 6 months earlier, heart attack at 58, totally unexpected. The whole town showed up for the funeral. There were so many flowers. The church looked like a damn botanical garden. Anyway, Catherine wanted to turn the attic into some kind of meditation room or whatever. You know how it goes, rich people and their renovations. So Marcus is up there, sweating his arse off because it's the middle of summer, and attics in old houses are basically ovens, right? He's sorting through boxes of Christmas decorations, old tennis rackets, his dad's college stuff. Then he finds it, wedged behind this ancient wardrobe, wrapped in what looks like an old bedsheet. There's this painting, and not just any painting. This thing was massive, had to be like 4 feet tall, 3 feet wide, heavy too. Marcus said when he pulled it out, dust went everywhere, made him cough for like 5 minutes straight. He unwraps it, and at first, he's thinking maybe it's something his dad bought at an estate sale or whatever. Rich guys love that stuff, you know. But then he actually looks at it. The painting showed a woman, mid-30s maybe, with this cascade of dark hair and these intense green eyes that seemed to follow you around the room. She was sitting in what looked like a garden, wearing this flowing white dress. And here's the kicker: she was holding a baby. A little boy, couldn't have been more than a few months old, wrapped in a blue blanket. Now, Marcus studied art history in college before he switched to finance, so he knows a thing or two about paintings. And this was no amateur hour. The brushstrokes, the technique, the way the light hit the woman's face, this was professional work, real deal stuff. But that's not what made Marcus's blood run cold. In the bottom right corner, there was a signature, and next to it, a date, June 15th, 1987. Marcus was born in March 1988. His sister Emma came along in 1990, and his parents, they got married in June 1987. He knew that date by heart because they made a huge deal about their anniversary every year. Big parties, renewal of vows, the whole production. So who the hell was this woman? And whose baby was she holding? Marcus said he just stood there for like 20 minutes, staring at this thing. His mind was racing. Maybe it was a relative, but he'd never seen this woman at any family gathering. And trust me, the Hendersons documented everything. They had photo albums going back generations. He pulled out his phone and snapped a picture. Then he carefully wrapped the painting back up and shoved it behind the wardrobe. He didn't even know why he was hiding it. It was just this gut instinct, you know, like he'd stumbled onto something that wasn't supposed to be found. That night, he couldn't sleep, kept thinking about those green eyes, that baby, the date. He was gonna ask his mum about it, but every time he tried, the words just died in his throat. Something told him this was gonna open a can of worms that couldn't be closed. 2 days later, he drove back up to Westchester, told his mum he forgot something, went straight to the attic, grabbed the painting, and brought it to his apartment in the city. He said he felt like a thief in his own family's house. That's when he called me. I came over, and man, I gotta tell, using that painting in person was something else. There was something about it, something intimate and raw. The way the woman was looking at the baby, It wasn't just any mother and child. You could feel the love radiating off the canvas, but there was also this sadness in her eyes, like she knew something terrible was coming. "You gotta find out who painted this," I told Marcus. "That's step one." So we did what anyone would do in 2024. We used Google Lens, took a picture of the signature, and ran it through every database we could find. Art registries, auction house records, gallery websites. Nothing. Strike that, not nothing. We found one hit. A small gallery in Soho had sold a painting by the same artist back in 1988. Different piece, but same signature. The gallery was called Luminous Arts, and miracle of miracles, it was still in business. Marcus called the next morning. The woman who answered sounded about 100 years old. He explained he was trying to track down information about an artist who desold work through them in the late 80s. She put him on hold for what felt like forever. When she came back, her voice had changed. It was cautious, guarded. "The artist you're referring to," she said slowly, "hasn't painted in over 30 years. As far as I know, she left New York sometime in 1988. I only handled one sale for her. I'm afraid I can't provide any additional information." Marcus pushed. He's a finance guy. He knows how to be persistent without being aggressive, but this woman wasn't budging. Finally, she said something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. "Young man, if you're asking about this particular artist, then you already know more than you should. My advice, leave it alone." She hung up. Leave it alone. Those 3 words echoed in Marcus's head for days. But could you leave it alone? Could anyone? He decided to go nuclear. He went through his dad's personal effects, the stuff his mum had packed away in the study. File cabinets full of legal documents, old cases, financial records going back decades. Marcus knew he was looking for something, but he didn't know what. He found it at 3 in the morning on a Friday night, half delirious from lack of sleep and too much coffee. It was a bank statement from 1987, a separate account, not the family account. Regular withdrawals, all to the same recipient, V. Morrison. Marcus went through more files. The payments went on for years, monthly, like clockwork. $5,000 a month from 1987 to 1997. Then they stopped. $5,000 a month for 10 years. That's $600,000, more than $500,000 to someone named V. Morrison. Marcus's hands were shaking. He pulled out the painting again, studied that signature. Could it be? He pulled up the Google search results from the gallery. And there it was, buried in the details of that one sale. The artist's name, Vivian Morrison. Holy shit. His dad had been paying someone named V. Morrison for 10 years, starting right around the time that painting was made. And the painting showed a woman with a baby, dated June 1987, the same month his parents got married. I know what you're thinking. Affairs happen, right? Rich, powerful guy has a mistress, pays her off, tale as old as time. But Marcus said it was more than that. The way the woman in the painting looked at that baby, there was something there that he recognized, something in the eyes, the shape of the face. He needed to know more. He hired a private investigator. Cost him $5,000, but at that point, Marcus was all in. He had to know the truth. The investigator came back 2 weeks later with a file. Vivian Morrison, born 1955 in Boston, moved to New York in 1979 to pursue art. Moderate success in the mid-80s, then nothing. She dropped off the map in 1988, but here's where it gets wild. The investigator found a birth certificate, filed in New York City, July 1987. Baby boy, 8 pounds, 3 ounces. Mother's name, Vivian Morrison. Father's name, blank. Baby's name, Daniel Morrison. Marcus told me he threw up. Just straight up puked in his trash can, because he'd seen that name before. In his dad's papers, there were tuition payments to a private school in Connecticut for a Daniel Morrison, payments that started in 1993 and went through 2005. His dad had been paying for some kid's entire education, kindergarten through high school, and this kid was born a full 8 months before Marcus. You're following this? Because it gets worse. Marcus tracked down Daniel Morrison on social media. It wasn't hard, the guy had a public Instagram. And when Marcus pulled up that profile, he said he felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Daniel Morrison looked exactly like Marcus's dad. Same strong jaw, same nose, same hairline. It was like looking at a photo of Richard Henderson from 30 years ago. No doubt about it, this was his dad's son, his older brother, his dad's firstborn. But that wasn't even the craziest part. The craziest part was that Daniel Morrison lived in Stamford, Connecticut, 30 minutes from Westchester. This whole time, Marcus's half-brother had been just down the road. Maybe they'd passed each other in the grocery store, sat in the same movie theater, pumped gas at the same station. Marcus spiraled. For like 2 weeks, he didn't tell anyone. Not me, not his mom, not his sister. He just obsessed over Daniel's social media, learning everything he could. The guy was a high school teacher, history, married, 2 kids, seemed normal, happy even. His last name was Morrison, so he clearly hadn't grown up knowing Richard Henderson was his father. Or had he? That's what Marcus couldn't figure out. Did Daniel know? Did his mother tell him? And why did the payments stop in 1997? Daniel would have been 10 years old. Marcus decided he had to know. He found out where Daniel worked, some public high school in Stamford, and waited in the parking lot after school one day. When Daniel came out, Marcus followed him to a coffee shop, watched him order a latte, sit down with a stack of papers to grade. Then Marcus walked over and sat down across from him. "Daniel Morrison," he said. Daniel looked up, confused. "Yeah, do I know you?" "No," Marcus said, "but I think we might be related. I wasn't there for this part, but Marcus told me everything later." He said Daniel's face went through about 10 different emotions in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, fear, anger. Finally, he just looked tired. "You're Richard's son," Daniel said. Not a question, a statement. Marcus nodded. "You knew?" "My mom told me when I was 16, Daniel said. "Right before she died." That's when Marcus learned the whole story. And man, buckle up, because this is where everything falls apart. Vivian Morrison met Richard Henderson in 1985 at some art gallery opening in Manhattan. He was a young lawyer on the rise. She was a struggling artist. They fell hard for each other, the way people do when they're young and stupid and think love conquers everything. Vivian got pregnant in late 1986. She was excited. Richard was terrified. See, Richard was already engaged to Catherine Aldridge, hold money, connected family, exactly the kind of wife a young lawyer needed to climb the social ladder. Breaking off that engagement wasn't just breaking a promise, it was career suicide. Richard made a choice. He told Vivian he'd support her and the baby financially, but he couldn't be in their lives, not publicly. He was going through with the wedding. Vivian, according to Daniel, was devastated, but she was also trapped. Single mother in New York City in the late 80s. Not easy, so she took the deal. Richard set up the payments, and Vivian raised Daniel alone. The painting was her way of coping. She painted it while she was pregnant, imagining what life would be like. That garden, that peace, that moment of perfect happiness with her son. It was the life she wanted, captured on canvas. Richard kept the painting. Vivian found out years later from a friend who'd seen it in his office, before he hid it away in the attic. She was furious, but what could she do? Then, in 1997, Vivian got cancer, ovarian, stage 4. She called Richard, told him she was dying. She wanted Daniel to know the truth, to have a relationship with his father. She begged him. Richard refused. Said it would destroy his family, his career, everything he'd built. He'd keep paying for Daniel's education, but that was it. No contact, no acknowledgement, nothing. Vivian died 3 months later. She was 42 years old. Daniel said he tried to reach out once, when he turned 18, wrote a letter to Richard's office, got back a formal response from a lawyer, not his father. Just some associate saying Richard Henderson had no interest in contact, and any further attempts would be considered harassment. So Daniel moved on, built his own life, got married, had kids, became a teacher. He never tried again. "I'm sorry you had to find out like this," Daniel told Marcus at that coffee shop, "but honestly, your dad was a coward. He had a choice, and he chose his image over his own son. I made peace with that a long time ago." Marcus said that hit him like a freight train, because his whole life, his dad had been this hero, this pillar of the community. Everyone loved Richard Henderson. Everyone thought he was this great man. But great men don't abandon their children. Great men don't pay hush money. Great men don't hide paintings in attics like dirty secrets. Marcus didn't tell his mum right away. He thought about it for weeks. The family image, the perfect Henderson legacy. Did he really want to blow that up? His dad was already dead. What good would it do? But then he thought about Daniel, his brother, who grew up without a father because Richard Henderson cared more about appearances than his own flesh and blood, who never got to go to family dinners, never got Christmas presents from his dad, never got to hear, "I'm proud of you." And Marcus thought about Vivian Morrison, dead at 42, begging the man she loved to just acknowledge their son, dying alone, knowing her boy would never have his father. So he told his mum, brought her the painting, showed her the bank statements, explained everything. Catherine didn't say anything for a long time, just stared at that painting, at Vivian Morrison's face. Then she started crying. Not loud, just quiet tears rolling down her face. "I knew," she whispered. Marcus said his blood went cold. "What?" "I knew about Vivian," Catherine said. "Your father told me before the wedding. He said it was over, that he'd made arrangements. I thought arrangements meant money, that he'd pay support, and that would be it. I didn't know there was a child. He never told me about Daniel. She'd lived for 37 years, not knowing her husband had a son. Another betrayal, another secret. The painting," she said. "He told me it was by some artist he liked, that he bought it at a gallery. I always thought the woman looked sad. Now I know why." Emma found out next. She took it hard, punched a hole in her apartment wall, called their dad every name in the book, and trust me, Emma knows some creative curse words. She was angry for Daniel, angry for her mum, angry that the family she thought she had was built on lies. That was 2 months ago. Last week, Marcus called Daniel and asked if he wanted to meet the rest of the family. Daniel said yes. They met at a restaurant in White Plains, neutral ground, Catherine, Marcus, Emma, and Daniel, plus Daniel's wife, who'd been kept in the dark about all of this, until Daniel found out Marcus existed. Marcus said it was the most awkward meal of his life, at least at first. Nobody knew what to say. What do you say to the brother you didn't know you had? To the stepson, who is a secret for 36 years. But then Emma asked Daniel about his kids. He pulled out his phone, showed them pictures. His daughter just turned 8, loves soccer and drawing. His son is 5, obsessed with dinosaurs. Marcus's niece and nephew, Emma's niece and nephew, Catherine's grandchildren, real people, real family, kept apart because Richard Henderson cared more about his image than the truth. They talked for hours. Daniel told stories about his mum, about growing up knowing his father was out there somewhere but couldn't be bothered to show up. Catherine apologized about 100 times, even though none of it was her fault. Emma cried. Marcus just sat there, still trying to process that his entire life had been based on a lie. But here's the thing, and this is what makes the whole story worth telling. By the end of that dinner, something had shifted. They weren't just strangers connected by DNA anymore. They were family. Messy, complicated, broken family, but family nonetheless. Daniel's coming to Thanksgiving this year, with his wife and kids. They're gonna do Christmas together too. Emma's already bought presents for her niece and nephews, the fun aunt now apparently. And the painting, Catherine had it professionally restored and framed. It's hanging in her living room now, right where everyone can see it. No more hiding, no more secrets. That's Vivian, she tells anyone who asks. Daniel's mother. She was a beautiful artist and deserved so much better than she got. Marcus says he visits Daniel every couple of weeks. They grab lunch, talk about sports, normal brother stuff. Turns out they both hate the Yankees and love terrible action movies. They're planning a fishing trip next month. It's weird, Marcus told me last week. His dad's been dead for almost a year, and Marcus feels like he's finally getting to know him. The real him. Not the perfect image, but the flawed, scared human being who made terrible choices and hurt people he should have protected. I don't know if I can forgive him, Marcus said. Maybe I never will, but at least now I know the truth. And I have a brother. That's something. The Hendersons aren't the perfect family anymore. But maybe there's something better. They're real. So that's the story. The painting in the attic that shattered everything. And you know what the craziest part is? If Marcus hadn't been helping his mom that day, if he hadn't pulled out that wardrobe, if he'd just let the painting sit there in the dark, they never would have known. Daniel would still be the secret son. Vivian would still be the forgotten woman. And the Hendersons would still be pretending to be perfect. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What secrets are hiding in your family's attic? What paintings are wrapped up in old sheets, waiting to be found? Because here's what I learned from all this. Perfect families don't exist. They're just regular families that are better at hiding their mess. And sometimes, The truth is messy and painful, and destroys everything you thought you knew. But it's still better than living a lie. Marcus called me yesterday. Said Daniel's bringing his kids over this weekend, and Marcus is going to teach them how to play basketball. His dad never did that with him. Richard was always too busy working, too focused on maintaining that perfect image. But Marcus, he's not making that mistake. He's showing up. He's being real. And maybe, just maybe, that's what real family looks like. Not the perfect Christmas card photo, but the messy, complicated truth. The broken pieces coming together to build something new. The Hendersons will never be perfect again, but they're finally honest. And isn't that worth more? Think about that next time you see a perfect family on social media. Wonder what paintings they've got hidden in their attic. What secrets they're keeping. What truths they're too scared to face. Because we've all got secrets. We've all got hidden paintings. The question is, are you brave enough to unwrap them?